the isolated windswept desert of eastern Syria, only an hour's drive west of the Iraqi border, is the long-forgotten Hellenistic walled city of Dura Europos. Although the existence of Dura Europos was long known through literary sources, it was only rediscovered in 1920 by British troops. Major archaeological diggings were then carried out in the 1920s and 1930s by French and American teams. The finds were amazingly well preserved, and the site soon became known as the Pompeii of the desert. To understand its archaeological significance, one has to understand its history. Between the years 335 to 323 BC, Alexander the Great conquered what was then considered most of the known world. After his death in 323 BC, his leading generals, eventually known as the successors, jostled for supremacy over parts of his empire for the next 10 years. One of them, Seleucus Nicator, eventually established himself in Babylon in 312 BC, thus founding the Seleucid Empire. As part of a network of military colonies intended to secure Seleucid control of the middle Euphrates, a new city, Dura Europos, was established on the southern bank of the Euphrates River in 303 BC. Dura's location was ideal because it was both easy to defend and near a major water source. Situated on a slight bend 90 metres above the Euphrates River, with deep valleys on either side of the site, with only the western desert-facing walls exposed to possible attack, made Dura Europos an ideal site for a fortified city. Here the city stood at the intersections of empires for 5 centuries. The Greeks named it Europos after the hometown of its founders, while later, during the Parthian and Roman periods, the locals called it Dura, a Syrian term meaning fortified city. Thus its name, Dura Europos, is a modern archaeological construct. Situated at the crossroads of multiple trade routes, Dura Europos, eventually encompassing over 180 acres within the city walls, became the home to a confluence of eastern and western civilizations and an extremely multicultural population. In the year 113 BC, 187 years after it was established, the city was conquered by the Parthians. This domination lasted for nearly 3 centuries and was only briefly interrupted by a Roman occupation in the year 115 to 117 AD, during the Roman Emperor Trajan's expedition to and capture of Ctesiphon, the Parthian capital city located near modern-day Baghdad. By 160 AD, the Parthians' westward movement threatened Rome's borders along the Euphrates, forcing the Roman Emperor Lucius Varus to lead his forces to Syria to push back the enemy. By 165 AD, Varus captured Dura and made it a Roman city, incorporating the stronghold into the Roman defensive system along the eastern frontier of the empire. Nearly 9 decades after coming under Roman control, and anticipating an invasion of Roman Syria by the Sassanians, successors to the Parthian Empire, the Roman garrison at Dura Europos massively strengthened the city's defences, intending to hold out at all costs. The Roman emperor of the period, Valerian I, raised an army for the relief of the east. However, with the Vandals, the Franks and the Goths all assaulting Rome's northern borders, he arrived too late to relieve the siege. The Sassanid Persians had become adept at tunnelling under fortifications in order to undermine them and create breaches. As a countermeasure, the Roman garrison decided to sacrifice the street and the buildings along the western wall of the city by filling them in with rubble to bolster the wall's thickness. In doing so, a Christian house church, synagogue, mithraeum, and as many as 12 blocks of the city were intentionally entombed. There is no written record of the siege of Dura Europos. However, archaeologists were able to uncover quite striking evidence of the savagery of the siege, how it progressed, and the final outcome, all from the archaeological remains. In the year 256 AD, 560 years after the founding of the city, the Sassanid king Shapur I laid siege. True to the fears of the defenders, Shapur set his engineers to undermine what archaeologists called Tower 19, 2 towers north of the Palmyrian Gate, which is the main entrance to the city. When the Romans became aware of the threat, they dug a countermine, with the aim of meeting the Persian effort and attacking them before they could finish their work. The Sassanids managed to fight off the Roman attack, and when the city's defenders noticed the flight of their soldiers from the countermine, it was quickly sealed. The countermine, however, was successful, for the Persians abandoned their operations at Tower 19. In 2009, an archaeologist at the University of Leicester claimed to have found evidence that the Persian Empire used poisonous gases at Dura against the Roman defenders during the tunnelling of Tower 19. Excavations had discovered the remains of 19 Roman and 1 Persian soldier at the base of the city walls. It has been suggested that when the Roman countermine breached the Sassanids' mine, bitumen and sulphur crystals were ignited by the Sassanids to create a poisonous gas, which was then funneled through the tunnel with the use of underground chimneys and bellows. The Roman assault party were unconscious in seconds, dead in minutes. The lone Persian soldier discovered among the bodies is believed to be the individual responsible for releasing the gas before the fumes overcame him as well. Next, the Sassanids attacked Tower 14, the southernmost tower along the western wall. This time the mining operation was successful in that it caused the tower and adjacent walls to subside. However, the Roman countermeasures again worked, as the reinforcing of the walls prevented them from collapsing and creating a breach. This brought a third approach to attacking the city. This time a ramp was raised, 40 metres long and 10 metres high, attacking the city walls between towers 14 and 15. As it was being built, and the Roman garrison fought to stop its progress, the Sassanids started another 2 mines near its base. The mines eventually pierced the inner embankment, and when the ramp was completed, the city's end had come. The sack of the city would have seen the survivors marched off to Ctesiphon and there sold as slaves. The city, once ransacked, was abandoned and never occupied again, eventually being covered by the shifting sands of the desert, ensuring the buildings next to the west wall remained entombed and preserved for archaeologists, who uncovered them almost 1,700 years later. Much is preserved from this last Roman phase of the city's history. Remains include parchment, papyri and carved inscriptions attesting to the numerous languages spoken and understood in ancient Dura Europos, including Greek, Latin, Palmyrian, Hebrew, Aramaic, Early Arabic and Middle Persian. The various religions that coexisted in the city speak to an equally complex culture, with temples to Greek, Roman and Palmyrian gods, as well as dedicated places of worship for Christians and Jews. The excavations open scholars' eyes to the art and architecture of a thriving, multi-ethnic city of perhaps 10,000 people. The Roman military culture also contributed to the city's diversity. Troops were recruited from all parts of the empire, which resulted in a multilingual mix from Northern Europe to the Mediterranean and beyond. Through the centuries, one culture after another left its imprint on Dura Europos. Even if Romans issued military orders in Latin, and clerks and shopkeepers spoke Aramaic, and many people in the street kept their native tongues, the principal language of government and culture remained the Greek of its founders. Over the last 95 years, archaeologists have uncovered a multitude of buildings dedicated to military, civilian and religious uses. Significant finds include various temples dedicated to Greek, Roman and Palmyrian gods and goddesses, Athlad, Zeus, Adonis, Artemis, Jupiter and Atargatis. A Mithraeum and the Temple of Bel were both uncovered within the Roman fortified camp in the northwest corner of the city. Other discoveries are the Praetorium, baths, an amphitheatre, palace of the commander, the citadel, a huge Greek marketplace known as an agora, and most importantly to modern-day religious studies, a Christian house church and a synagogue. In its time and place, the ancient city of Dura Europos had much in common with today's cosmopolitan urban landscapes. New Yorkers would have felt right at home in the grid pattern of streets, where merchants lived, scribes wrote, and Jews worshipped in the same block not far from a Christian church. The Jewish synagogue, located by the western wall between towers 18 and 19, is dated by an Aramaic inscription to 244 AD, and is a remarkable creation of the Hellenistic period. It is the best preserved of many ancient synagogues of that era. When uncovered in 1932, it was found that it contains a forecourt and house of assembly, with frescoed walls depicting people and animals, and a Torah shrine in the western wall facing Jerusalem. The synagogue's paintings are the earliest continuous surviving biblical narrative cycle ever discovered. Also uncovered is the earliest Christian house church ever identified. Located by Tower 17, it was preserved by the same defensive infill that saved the synagogue. This church occupied a typical upper-class two-storey Roman house centred around a columned courtyard. Though not as famous and is smaller and less extensively decorated with wall paintings than the nearby synagogue, there are many other similarities between the two buildings. Scholars speculate that the congregation gathered around the pool, which was used for baptism, and in the atrium sat the bishop, who celebrated Eucharist at the table. The surviving frescoes of the baptistry room show the Good Shepherd, the healing of the paralytic, and Christ and Peter walking on the water. These are the earliest paintings of Jesus Christ ever found and date back to 235 AD. There were also frescoes of Adam and Eve as well as David and Goliath. Since Christian worship was still prohibited and subject to persecution in the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD, it was necessary for Christian places of worship to be discreet, if not completely secret. Thus, the converted house churches of this era, as at Dura Europos, show no exterior change. Also partially preserved by the defensive embankment was a shrine to the god Mithra, a deity believed to be popular among both Roman and Persian soldiers of the time. The Mithraeum, located between towers 23 and 24, was built in a place that, in 165 AD, became the Roman army's encampment. The earliest archaeological traces found within the temple are from between 168 and 171 AD, which coincides with the arrival of Emperor Lucius Varius and his troops. An inscription stone from 210 AD mentions the Roman Emperor Septimus Severus. In 256 AD, with the war with the Sassanians looming, the sanctuary, as well as all the other buildings and streets along the western wall, were filled in and became part of the strengthened fortifications. Other finds include arms and armour belonging to the Roman garrison at the time of the final Sassanid Siege in 256 AD. These include painted wooden shields, the only example of an intact Roman legionary shield ever discovered, and complete horse armour, incredibly well preserved after 1,700 years by the very finality of the destruction of the city in its final hours. Cities such as Alexandria, Antioch, Damascus, Jerusalem and Palmyra may be the shining lights of Eastern antiquity, but Dura Europos demands much attention. Its vast array of religious buildings, paintings, sculptures, its enduring cultural complexity, its remarkable representation of daily life in a medium-sized town in the ancient world, and not least, the dramatic remains of the fortifications and siege works, combined with the precipitous views over the green valley of the Euphrates, all make for a striking experience.